Wake up! I'm Doug, and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And here we are today on coffee review number 12. And today we're looking at a single source coffee from Peru. And this will be the last of our South American coffees. So I'm going to pour it, let it cool off. Heck, I'll just pour another one too. So I always need 2 or 3. They don't cool off fast enough. Nice, light, I can see through it. It's a light roast. Nothing much dark about it. I'm going to use this book and map to show you where it came from in Peru. So this book is my new favorite by Annette Moldver called Coffee Obsession. And it's got all sorts of recipes, gear, and descriptions of coffee growing and where it comes from and how it gets here. And lots of maps of the coffee growing countries. So here's the Peru map. And I know it's from this region up here. The bag tells you it is from the Utubamba region or state or department of the country. But it is not on this map. But I found it on Google Maps. So I printed out a big one. And it is way over here, directly north of Cajamarca, which is on this map, but it lets you place it in this coffee growing region to the north of the country. And Peru does not have quite the, it's not as big as some of the other coffee growing countries in South America, and their coffee growing region is not as developed. But there's more and more infrastructure going in for it. And this is interesting because it's way over on the Pacific side of the country. So there's lots of ways this could be different than other Central and South American coffees that we've had. So just want to point out where all that comes from. So this was not one of my cheapo wholesale type buys where $4 a pound gets you these amazing coffees, but this was more like $12 a pound, so I was careful how I used it. And the interesting thing was I was trying a program that is better for Central and South American coffees at roasting, and I thought, oh my, yeah, when I couldn't add any more time to it, it was not very dark. It was this nice light brown, not quite tan, but way lighter than the other coffees I've been doing. And I'm really shooting for a medium roast. And the beans usually turn out darker. I thought I messed it up, thought it wasn't good. So I tried a different program and added all the time I could. And it came out just about the same color. It has a really interesting nose. It's different than the other Central and South American coffees have been. There's a creaminess and a nuttiness, a buttery kind of feel to it. And both of them turn out with similar noses, I would say. The aromas are nutty and buttery and creamy. I don't know what words to use other than that. It's not chocolatey, it's not fruity. Just a real enticing smell that makes you want to go in and drink it. So the beans turned out much lighter than I was expecting. So there's just something different about the Peru coffee. I don't get a whole lot on the nose. It might be a little cocoa. Still pretty hot to my thumb. Might be a little cocoa, might be a tad fruity. Like apricot or peach or maybe mango. But it's faint. It's distant. It's not close to your nose, and your nose doesn't know what to call it. Okay, so let's try a sip. Still pretty hot, and oh, it's more fruity on the arrival. Cherry or plum. Strawberry or unripe. Raspberry, unripe blackberry, something like that. It's not quite the full fruity aroma or full fruity taste. But it's definitely in that direction. And I can't really say there's cocoa notes or earthy notes. There's nothing deep and dark and rich like the darker beans have been. There's something lighter about it, and that's reflected in the look of the beans. So that appearance or expectations coming through on the palate also. So there might be something that's interpreted as a nuttiness, pecan or almond, something Swedish. Some to the sweet side, a little to the nutty side, a little roasted. But just slightly. So still no earthiness, no cocoa, no chocolate things. Nothing suggesting dark, earthy, rich things. It's fruity, light. There's a brightness to it. There's a hint of acidity. And acidity in a good way. Like lemon or orange. That doesn't just mean sour, it means bright. It will wake you up in the morning. So wow, this one went away fast. But it is very unlike any of the South American ones or Central American ones we've had. Wow. Very nice. Second one, more of the same. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit more. It's not too hot to drink, but might show some more flavors when I let it cool. So if you like the coffee reviews you've been seeing here and the extra information I try to provide, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below and leave a question. Subscribe to the channel and click on that bell to get notified when the new videos come out on Mondays. As I said, this is our last South American coffee of the 4 that we've had, and then we'll be moving on over to Africa and try 4 from over there. It is solid, fruity, bright, decent, strong flavor, but not very deep. There's no base notes, there's no grounding and earthiness or cocoa. And I think the color supports it. I can see through it pretty easily. It's a nice deep orange or a deep brown, like maybe a cola or a really dark tea. But the fruit notes are up, they're top notes. They're mid notes at the lowest. So it's bright, pleasant, fruity. And you could talk all day about what the fruits they are. There could be, now that it's cooling off, I'm getting a little bit of the lighter tasting things, mango, apricot, peach, maybe papaya or other tropical things. Maybe a hint of pineapple. So they're tropical, lighter fruits. I started off with some maybe cherry or plum, and now I'm getting things that have lighter colors than that. So I'm liking this, but it's very different than the things we've had so far. So instead of reading from this orange and white label, just want to go over the origin of this. It was grown at 1,300 to 1,700 meters. The varieties are Catamor, Caturra, and Typica. All kinds of Arabica beans. And the region or state that it's from is called Uctubamba. It's a washed process, and it says it comes from 109 family plantations. And they give flavor notes of moderate acidity, deep array of flavors. And they only recommend light to medium roast, so they don't recommend going darker because it doesn't turn out so well somehow, some way. So that is a recommend, and very different. You'd have to. Doesn't taste a whole lot like coffee that a lot of people are used to. Nothing bitter, nothing dark, nothing deep, nothing roasted in the taste. So I've poured this to add a little cream to it, which I like doing in my tastings here, although I don't do it in everyday life, and didn't bring a spoon, so we'll just have to spin it around to mix it up. And I didn't go overboard on the cream like I do sometimes, or usually, like every time, because this one is so light it could be easily covered up or totally changed by the cream. So I tried to be a little light on that. And here we get, wow. The flavor doesn't change much, but the mouthfeel does. I'm not getting creaminess or buttery notes or caramely chocolate milk like I usually do. There's no chocolate notes for it to interact with. So it's still fruity. It's maybe a little sweeter from the milk sugar, the lactose that's in there. I added half and half that was in that little pitcher. It was milk and cream and plenty of fat. And I get the fat on the mouth texture, but I can't say it has changed the taste greatly. So that's really strange compared to all the other ones. So very novel. So I don't know what we're going to find over in Africa and Indonesia and Asia and all those other places we're going to, but I think they're different over there. So that is quite interesting, different than what we've had. And a good contribution from Peru. So again, it came from Smoking Beans. I'll put the link to this, both unroasted and roasted, down in the description, so you can get you some if you're so inclined. And the second topic of the day is going to be cold brew, some that I make and some that's commercial. So let me go get those. Okay, for the cold brew section here, I made a couple of preps at home using coffees I had around the house, something I roasted, something in a package I recently purchased. But it's really not my thing. I'm not into it right now. I also purchased a few commercial ones, so those are in the fridge and I'll bring them out in a little bit. But those really aren't on my radar screen. I don't think about cold brew coffee. I guess I did a little bit of iced coffee when McDonald's came out with their new line probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought it was good, if thin and weak. But I have this contraption that we probably used 10 years ago, 15 years ago here at home. My wife and I wanted to try it, so here's this contraption where you put a cork in the bottom, little filter pad. It's a big plastic tub. It's got a little recess inside for this filter disc that you put in. So it's pretty coarse and lets everything go through fast. Then you put in 12 ounces, 13 ounces, 16 ounces, whatever the recipe said. There was a book with it. And you mix it with the right amount of water and stick it in the fridge overnight. Maybe there was a cover or a cap. And then after the right amount of time, and I've seen lots of recipes nowadays where you let it drip the whole time. But you pull out the cork, let it drip over this thing, and then you've got this thing of usually double strength coffee that you can pour over ice, water, milk, different things. So I'm not totally unfamiliar with it, but it's not really in my wheelhouse right now. So there's some of the gear you can buy, but these were made much more simply. This was just ground coffee, coarsely ground coffee, weighed to the gram, stirred in with some water, and then it sat in the fridge overnight in a cup. And I filtered it through a paper filter in this thing just now. So these are still cold. One I did with this Pike Place roast from Starbucks that I used to like a lot and now like less and need to use it up. It's darker tasting roast. So that's what's in here. And then I did my own roast that I'll describe in a minute. But I'm going to open this guy up and do some tasting. Smells like coffee. I'm going to mix I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of water and brew. Whoops, a little too much. So it's almost clear. I can see through it. It's very red and orangey. And I'll do a little taste before I add some water. Definitely smells like coffee. Oh yeah, it's strong. I mean, coffee-like. It's not very bitter. And I only get the deep, dark, roasted notes in it. That makes sense from the coffee I made it from. There's mostly Robusta in there, I think. I only taste deep, dark, burnt type notes. So I'm mixing this with an equal amount of water. And it looks a little on the weak side, a little thin. Usually now it tastes a little thin, but I still get all the deep, dark notes. And so you adjust these things with your grind in your recipe. And you put in more coffee. For the amount of water that your vessels hold. Brew longer, go 12 hours. Go 16 hours, go 20 and 24. Figure out what works for you. And once you dial it in, you can use that over and over. You might have to tweak it a bit for other coffees. Maybe even other water sources. This is certainly drinkable and a good caffeine delivery system. It's pleasant and you don't get any of those unpleasant coffee notes that people are always talking about trying to avoid. So my other experiment with this stuff, you mix it half and half with milk. So there's 1.5 ounces. Of the cold brew from the Pike Place. And here's 1.5 ounces of 2% milk. We'll see how that goes. Oh, really nice. It's got that caramely chocolate milk note that I get when I add cream to my own brews. Usually. So that is a nice flavor, and it doesn't taste too weak or dilute. And some people might want a little more coffee punch, oomph, strength, intensity, but that is a pretty good combination right there. So I think this one's a little weak in spite of the dark roast, and could use a little more time or a little more coffee in the mix. Okay, so there's one down. And this next one I only made half a batch, so I gotta be careful how I use it. But it is from my Brazil D-, and my Brazil Pea Berry blend. So I mix those 50-50 to grind the coffee that went into this mixture. And I'm getting good deep coffee notes. So I'm going to pour 1.5 ounces in, do a little taste, into a new cup. I get slightly different notes on the nose than the Pike Place. Oh, it's fruity, it's bigger, it's more expansive. Wow. Lemon, citrus. It's not sour, it's just bright like those notes. So I think the acidity came out in here. Wow, I like this. And I like it this strength. I'm gonna have to replace it before I do any mixing. So it could be a little something in my technique or recipe. This was over here 57 grams of coffee with 450 grams of water. which is a little more concentrated than a recipe I found online. And that went 12 hours, so you could certainly put in more coffee or make it go longer. And I don't think it's in danger of pulling out anything you don't want into the brew. This one is quite nice, just the way it is. Wow, so I like that. So I suspect I'm not going to like it diluted. I'm going to think it's too weak. So if you're shooting for something at double strength so you can add ice to it, you really got to do a little bit of testing and zero in on what you're after. Water, where's my water? So the two flavors, this has a better flavor, the more interesting flavor, because the inherent quality of the beans. And oh yeah, this looks very weak. It's orangey, golden brown with an orange cast to it. I don't smell a lot with it on the diluted form. I taste most of the same notes, and it's thin and weak, yeah. So I'm not brewing real good right now, and I'll know how to do better in the future, but it's not going to be my thing for sure. So nothing wrong with it other than being weak and watery. So let's do the milk version. So I'm going to go 2 ounces of the cold brew. Now that I know it's weak, I'll only do 1 ounce of milk. So that should keep a few more coffee notes in there. Yeah, it's pretty good. If a tad on the thin side. It is weak, but coffee-like and creamy. Again, pretty good hints of the caramely, butterscotchy chocolate milk. So it finds the cocoa notes and holds on to them and brings them to your taste buds. Cream and milk do interesting things to coffee. So I don't always taste the coffee notes right away. Don't find cocoa. I do find bitter sometimes, but I don't always find the chocolate notes. And that seems to find them for me. So that's real interesting. So that's what I brewed myself. Now I'm going to go get a couple I found on the shelf at the store. Okay, now for the commercial cold brew, I just grabbed a couple things I saw on the shelf at Walmart that were not from Starbucks. Starbucks had a zillion things, and most of them didn't say cold brew on them. But this is called Stoke Cold Brew Coffee, Low and Slow 10-hour brew coffee beverage. And I can see from the glass bottom of the bottle that I need to mix a little more. So this is called unsweet in the teal and not too sweet in the orange or red. This is right out of my fridge. Oh, it certainly looks darker and a little more sedimenty than mine does. Obviously there was some solids that could collect on the bottom and form a little mud pile. So it's a little cloudy and it's hard to see through. Oh my. There is something else. There's sweetness. There's graininess. Something else has been added. Okay, time to read the label. Calories 15. Well, just coffee wouldn't have any calories. Ingredients: coffee, filtered water, and coffee. Natural flavor. Produced in a facility that processes peanuts, tree nuts, soy, milk, egg, and wheat. Well, tastes like there's wheat in there too. So yeah, there's a different flavor that's not just coffee. So be careful what you get. Read the labels. Coffee notes are not deep, and I can't really tell what the other flavor is or sweetness. A creaminess or a dairy. Not especially fruity, but could be. I don't know what they would put into it. People do all sorts of crazy things, and they've done something beyond coffee here. So I'm not a big fan of it. So I might drink the rest, and I'll be done with Stoke. Okay, set that one aside. Get the new cup. And find the opening script for the sweetened one. So, if that's their unsweet, I don't know what this is like. Check for sediments and mixing. Okay. Ingredients here. Coffee, which is filtered water and coffee. Cane sugar, natural flavor. Okay. So I'm looking for the same odd extra flavor beyond coffee and sweet. I kind of smell the extra flavor on the nose now that I'm alert to it for it. Oh yeah, definitely sweet, and the extra flavor's there. And the sweet brings an extra dimension to that also, but it's not coffee. So if you're just grabbing a bottle of something and needing some caffeine, this will do. But it doesn't really give you a big coffee punch, that's for sure. My stuff was stronger coffee tasting. Coffee notes were much more pronounced than either of these. My thin stuff that I was complaining about because I brewed it too weak, that's what we have here. So, not a fan, and that's kind of what I thought was in this world. So, I'm sure people find their own favorites and find the kinds that they like. But it's not a world I'm going to be in. My last cold brew experiment is a step or two beyond cold brew. Although it says cold brew on the label, its claim to fame, La Colombe coffee. Its claim to fame is that they charge it with nitrous oxide to make it all foamy. So there's milk, there's flavoring, there's sugar, there's cold brew coffee. And I don't know if it's going to explode or foam out of the can or what, but I sure want it on camera if it does. So there's a little pull top tab and some little guard maybe on it to keep it from happening too early, like a safety on a gun. It doesn't give instructions on how to open it. So this one is called Mocha. And it says it's equivalent to 170 milligrams of caffeine. So equivalent to 2¼ cups of coffee. This one is called Triple Shot. Draught Latte is their generic name for the kind of product that is. With the pumped up gaseous foamy milk thing. 175 milligrams of natural caffeine is like 3 shots of espresso. So they're calling it a triple shot. Well, that's pretty tasty. Yeah, some people pay $3 and $4 for something like that, I would think. So it's chocolatey, there's coffee notes, nothing bitter. Nothing really intensely coffee-like either. So their cold brew coffee is really smooth and not bitter. Maybe to the sweet side by itself, and then they add sugar and cocoa. So that's a good flavor and fairly unimpressive foaming. Although the mouthfeel of the liquid is good. Little to the oily and creamy side because of the milk. and a little interesting because of the foam. And I don't think there's enough nitrous oxide to anesthetize yourself or anything. Okay, so pleasant and not very interesting. Oh my gosh, if I drink both of these, I'm going to have 350 milligrams of caffeine on top of the other stuff I did. Okay, here goes. I'll do all my morning tasks very quickly this morning. There, so you can see that it's very light, creamy, foamy on top, and it tastes about the way you'd expect. Sweet, creamy, milky. That's the same buttery, caramely, butterscotch, chocolate milk that I was just tasting before when I added cream to my own coffee. So yeah, I think it's a real recipe. So there you go, cold brew. Not really my thing. It's interesting. There's lots of nuances and lots of ways to do it. So if it's your thing, go to it. So let me remind you to give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment or question, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell to get notified when the new ones come out on Mondays. And stay awake until next time, and we'll be moving on over to Africa to sample some of their coffees. So cheers.